40 plus years ago, he and his partner started a company called Wesley Allen. And the name came from Victor's oldest son's name is Wesley, and his partner's oldest son's name is Allen. So that's where the name came from. Almost all of our products are made in Los Angeles. We do some sub-assemblies and bed frames in Mexico. And then bar stools, some of our bar stool components, the bases are made overseas. You folks don't currently have bar stools on the floor. You can
order, absolutely.
you can order our bar stools if you want to. It's the same Wesley Allen quality. So we offer you a really well-made product with a lot of choice. Okay? So one of the ways I think it's important for you to create value with your client is you have to understand some of the backstory and how the product was made. So I'm going to start from the very beginning. I'm going to start with our bed foundation or our bed frame. So I'll give you a handout. There's probably about halfway in. There's photos of beds. And it shows a bunch of different beds. Okay. On the bottom it says, it's got the letter V. So our bed frame is the strongest bed frame in the industry. We build everything out of heavy angle iron steel that's fully welded. All of our bed frames will hold 800 pounds. So a bed frame is like the foundation of a building. You don't build a skyscraper without a really strong foundation. Same thing with this. It's going to do two things. It's going to make the bed very solid, but the other thing it's going to do is it's going to make mattress and box springs perform the way that the manufacturer intends them to. So there's steel cross rails on either side. We have two side rails, and there's 3 cross rails, and then those cross rails on queens and kings have V supports underneath them. So there's plenty of support. The beds themselves, if you go up to any one of our beds, and I didn't put this one together, I encourage you to shake this thing to try to get it to squeak or move. And I don't know if you're involved with setting them up, they don't move. They're overbuilt. A couple of things. The thickness of the metal that we use, that's called the gauge. If you're in a Home Depot or Menards or something, and you saw a piece of PVC pipe cut in half, the wall thickness, that's the gauge of the iron. We use thicker than anybody else. So if you flick your thumbnail on this, you can feel how solid it is. It's not tinny sounding, it's heavier. So heavier means more durable, less prone to denting. We also use some of our product with solid steel, some of it is tubular. So this is tubular, this is solid iron here. One thing I've done for, 25 years, and feel free to do it if you want. I can stand on that, and I haven't bent or broken a weld in 25 years. So the product is overbuilt. I'm going to give you a buzzword that goes back to the first page that we use. It's called unibody construction. And it's actually a technique that's used in car and truck manufacturing. What that means is when we make a footboard or a headboard, everything is welded together in one piece. Okay? Now, a lot of our beds have decorative elements, that you'll see here and here. I'll get into that in a second. Those are called castings. What we do differently than most companies out there, where these 2 pieces of metal meet, actually there's 3, one here, one here, one here, where those all meet, if you were to knock this aluminum casting off, you'd see that it's fully welded underneath. That's why it's so strong. A lot of companies will use this aluminum cast to hold the bed together. The problem is that joint is not secure. It's eventually going to get loose. It's going to wiggle, wobble. If that was the case, and it's not on our product, and the client goes up to the bed and shakes it, and they hear it squeaking, what's the first thing that's going to come to mind? Probably if they're in bed squeaking. Anybody? What would you think if you walked up to a bed and you shook it and it squeaked?
Cheap.
Cheap? Not going to hold up. One of the things I think about is if you toss and turn in bed, every time you turn, you're going to hear that squeak. It's going to drive me nuts. So you're not going to have that problem. Everything fully welded, heavy gauge steel. Casting. What's a casting? Is anybody familiar with that term? You know what a casting is? Think of it as, why don't you share with us?
the mold is made, and then molten metal is poured into that mold in order to create that shape.
Exactly right. Did everybody hear what he said? So we have artisans that make the original mold, think of it like as a jello mold for molten aluminum. And basically the original molds are made by artisans out of plaster. So the carbon relief out of plaster and out of those original plaster molds, then we make aluminum or steel molds out of it. The way the process works, I haven't been out to a factory in a while, but the first time I saw them do it, it's pretty neat. They'll take a mold and they clamp it onto the iron. So there's a mold here, there's a mold here, and then all the way down the line. Each mold has a hole in it. So there's two guys that work together. The first guy clamps the molds on. The next guy has a welder's mask on, an asbestos suit, asbestos gloves, and he has, to your point, molten aluminum. Now when it comes out of the mold, there's rough edges, okay? So we go through about a 10-step deburring, sanding, filing operation to make sure everything is perfectly smooth. So a couple of things. Your client won't have to worry about, nicking their finger. You won't have to worry about if they've got fine bed linens that might snag on something that's rough. That's not going to happen on their beds. So now for finishes, we use powder-coated finishes. Anybody heard that term, powder-coated? Okay. Powder coating, the easiest way to it's a process where powder is electrostatically applied to the bed and then it's baked at high temperatures. And what happens is that powder actually liquefies and it bonds to the iron and the aluminum, and it's an extremely durable finish. Most companies that make outdoor furniture that sits outside in the snow and the rain, that's typically powder coated furniture, okay? Now what most companies do, when they powder coat, it's a single step. They spray a color. It may be flat, it may be a matte finish. They bake it, and that's it. Most of our finishes are multiple step finishes. So this finish, basically, they spray a base coat, they bake it. It comes back out, they spray a secondary coat. While the powder's still dry, we'll use different applicators sometimes to give it different textures and make the finish look a little different. Then it gets baked again. And then in this one, this finish is called aged iron. We actually hand highlight the casting. So it's been baked a couple of times, and an artisan will come by with paint, and they may hand highlight the finish. So a couple of things I want to tell you. The metal finishes, when you look in your catalog, and I'll pass this around, you've got a full color catalog, but you've also got, you can see our finishes on the website. Great example. Right. Look on your left. Do you see how there's a bar, a vertical bar, and then there's a cap on the top? The vertical bar represents the tubing, okay? So a little cap on the top, that represents the aluminum casting. So some of our finishes, the finish is going to be consistent from the iron to the aluminum. Some of our finishes we actually hand highlight, and the casting is going to be a contrasting color or a complementary color, but it's not the same. Does that make sense to everybody? Okay, so what you have to remember, I'll let you pass that around, and then there's more. There's like 3 pages of finishes. Okay. So when you look, if your client says, I want to see your finishes. When you look at this finish ring, any of the samples on here, it's only going to represent the iron. If there's a contrasting or complementary color on the casting, you'll have to look on our website or in the catalog. Okay, so finishes. Okay, so we have beds and bar stools. There are different finishes for beds and bar stools, just so you know. Some of them overlap, okay, like a matte black or things like that, rustic ivory, those overlap on both. The reason we have separate finishes is, remember I told you about the highlighting the castings? We don't put castings on our bar stools. So somebody would take a bed finish that typically is going to have a contrasting casting, and when it came to a bar stool, nobody knew where or if there was a contrasting casting. So on our website, it tells you which beds are available and for which finish is available for beds, which ones are available for bar stools. So you put any bed and any finish and any fabric, no upcharge. But of course, we had to come up with an exception to the rule, right? So about a year ago, we came out with 3 beds called Royce. As that catalog goes around, at the very beginning of our catalog, the iron is hand hammered. If you looked at the iron, basically it's got dents in it all the way around. And those 3 beds, it's actually the same bed in 3 different configurations, and we'll get into configurations a little later, are only available in those 3 hammered finishes. They're not available in any other finishes. And you can't say, I want a hammered finish on this bed. We're gonna politely say no. Okay, one thing to keep in mind, not all of our beds have aluminum castings. We have more contemporary, modern, mission style beds that don't have castings, or a lot of our upholstered beds, like this one, does not have any castings. So if you order a finish and you look on the finish chart, and that cap, the aluminum on the finish chart shows a different color, you're not gonna see that, right? Because there's no place for us to highlight. You're only gonna see what's on the iron, okay? Oh, limited lifetime warranty, that's really important. It's a product line you can really sell with confidence. In 25 plus years with Wesley Allen, I've taken back 1 bed frame. So, a couple years ago, one of my clients called and said, we've got a bed frame that's a broken wall. I said, really? I said, we sent a new one out, no problem, but so 1 in 25 years, that's pretty good. Our manufacturing rate of defect the last 5 years is less than 1/2 of 1%. So we're not perfect. I've never worked for a company that's perfect, but they try really hard. Lifetime warranty is kind of a thing you might want to mention to people. Also, within the industry, we're known as pretty much a quality house, and people, we don't typically lose a Wesley Allen retailer. It's very rare that they drop us. So you talk about unibody construction. What does a unibody construction do for it? Does anybody remember? What's that gonna do? It'll make it stronger, and then it'll last longer, not gonna rattle, okay? They're calling it a power bond finish. That's just like a trademark that we use for powder coating, same thing, okay? But remember, we do hand applications, so it's not always just one finish, it may be several finishes. It makes your client's product unique. They can customize it to get it the way they want. And then a Millennium bed frame. We actually came out with it in the year 2000, that's what they call it, the Millennium frame. Okay. Environment, Southern California is one of the toughest places to manufacture. We are a very green company. We produced about 20 years ago, we put in solar panels in our factory because we kept having brownouts. And as a manufacturer, if the power goes out, you send all your employees home and the power comes back on, now you've lost a day. Or you keep them around and the power doesn't come back on and you're paying them to do nothing. So we provide, I think, 75% of our own electricity, and then we sell back to the grid on the weekend. So we sell back to the county of Los Angeles, so that's a feel-good thing. We have 0 emissions, okay? Powder, when we spray powder, last time I was out there, 17 different spray booths. They're about the size of a garage. And when the powder is sprayed, there's vacuum behind the beds of the bar stool. And any overspray gets sucked in and used on the next time. So we could spray 17 different finishes at the same time if we wanted to, but we don't emit anything. And everybody's, interested. A lot of people are interested in hearing the green story, so we're very much into that and try to not pollute. And the fact that we're using, solar power to power factories kind of neat too. Okay, now we're going to get into the nuts and bolts of how our beds are numbered. Okay, so the most common thing that we make is in the upper left-hand corner. It's called a CB, or a complete bed with metal profile. All that means is a complete bed, in our terminology, means it's a headboard, a footboard, a Wesley Allen frame. Metal profile means, you can see it here, but you'll have to come up and look a little bit later, but there's a 5-inch side rail, okay? We used to use just like a L-shaped piece of steel to hold the box frame in place. And then retailers were wanting to paint the frame, and it was very expensive to do. And you're only seeing about 1.5 inches of iron. So about 4 or 5 years ago, we took a 5-inch piece of steel and we welded it to the bed frame. And then we powder coat it so that the color on the side rail matches the headboard and the footboard. And it was so popular, that's the only way we make a complete bed basically now. So when you order a complete bed with metal profile, that means headboard, footboard, frame, and the side rail. Now, if you were to take the box spring out to here, the center of the bed is still whatever is always going to be black. If you order a white bed, that side rail is going to be white color. That make sense? Okay. So now we have a couple other configurations. By the way, all of our beds are intended to house a mattress and a box spring, but we have an alternative for you to make it really easy to convert. So you can convert 90% of our beds can be converted to be used as a platform bed, meaning you don't need a box spring. And we're seeing more and more of that. People are buying, bed in the box online. People just buy a bed that's, they open the box and it expands, but now they don't have a bed frame or whatever. So we see a lot of that where people. Yes, sir.
How do they accommodate like motion days?
Great question. So, question I think was about adjustable bed mechanisms. Ours will accommodate almost all of them except sleep numbers. Sleep numbers apparently are a little odd size and they won't fit. The way it works is you're basically taking out those 3 cross rails and then you're building the bed around it. We also have a configuration called a headboard with a metal surround. It'll look very similar to this. It has an iron headboard, but this panel here and on both sides is 9 inches of solid steel. So that's called headboard metal surround. That's the third one. Then we have a headboard with fabric surround. That's what this is here. So you've got a headboard, and you've got 3 rails that are upholstered. Okay? Copier didn't do so great here, but if you're ordering a canopy, it's a CBC. That's a complete bed canopy. Headboard with platform, wood slats. And then we got a complete bed with canopy with fabric sides. And then we have a complete bed with fabric sides, which is very similar. This is a different version of the bed that you've got around the corner. Not all of our beds, matter of fact, most of our beds don't come in every configuration. They usually come in 2 or 3. I just want you to be aware of what the CBMPF stand for. It's explained in the catalog and also in the price list. Okay? If you go to the next page, it says beds also. The one in the upper left-hand corner, I'm going to come back to the one top center. On the top, second from the left, the CBMPF, but there's not a mattress and a box spring. That's where you can get a good look at our one of our very website. Okay. Okay. So we came out with an option about a year ago, and it's called a WS, which stands for wood slat. So if you have a client that they don't want to use a box spring, they just want to use a mattress, you want to offer them a platform bed. Most of our beds, not all of them, look up in the price list. Usually the second or third line item down, you're going to see -WS. That stands for wood slats. So what we do, it's kind of hard to see here, but on page 8 of whoever has the catalog right now, it's photographed really well for you to see it. We changed the bed frame slightly. We run another vertical rail from the headboard to the footboard. We include European slat roll system. I don't know if you're familiar with that, but it's wood slats, the queen size. They're 60 inches wide. They're bound together with black muslin. You roll them into place. And then in ours, we go a couple extra steps. There is a grommet on the frame near the headboard and near the footboard. And you take a bolt, and it goes right through the wood slats, so it's attached also at the head and the foot. So you don't have to worry about those wood slats migrating around. So if you get to that and you get confused, just call me and I'm happy to help you out. We do a few twin beds still, and then we have day beds also. Let's see, next page. We talked about twin beds. There's 2 different configurations in a twin. There's a CB, which is a complete bed, which is a headboard, a footboard, and a frame. That's intended to house a mattress and a box spring. We also have what's known as the CBS, and the S stands for sleeper. So the side rail, instead of being 7 or 8 inches off the ground, it's about 13 inches off the ground. You can use a mattress only. You don't need a bunking board, but it'll allow a trundle to roll underneath there. So that's the difference between complete bed or complete bed sleeper. Okay?
Real quick on the page before that, guys, there's headboard only. You can get a headboard only from these guys and technically use glideway frame. I would not suggest that. If a customer is ordering a headboard only, this one here that is a headboard only with the Wesley Allen frame, I would really highly recommend making sure you talk your customer into that. Because of the fact that their beds are so solid, they're built so solid, the quality is the really big selling feature behind these beds, that they don't shake, rattle, and roll when you're in them. If you don't put that Wesley Allen frame with it, it is going to be looser and not fit as well. So I wanna make sure that if we're selling the quality as of these beds, we sell that frame with them.
You're 100% right. Our bed frames, or headboard only, excuse me, we drill as many as 15 holes in each post. If it's straight, it's gonna be 15 holes. If it's a curve, it might not have as many, but I've never heard a generic frame not fitting on one of our headboards only. But to your point, our dealers asked us to come out with a headboard only frame. Some of our, if you go in the next room, some of our headboards now, we used to have a bunch of them, they're 72 inches tall, and they're all iron, and they're heavy as all get out. So we had dealers say, could you make a headboard only frame? We have it. So last thing I'll go over is day beds. Okay? This can cause some confusion. If somebody's looking for a day bed, you don't sell as many day beds. This is like the second page from the back of your handout. When you buy a day bed from us, you have to buy, there's two items you have to buy. You buy the day bed, and then you buy what's called the slatted frame. And the slatted frame is what holds the two arms and the back together. That's what the mattress sits on, okay? And then, of course, we've got an exception to that rule. We came out a couple of day beds about 5 years ago that have a roll-out trundle included. Those you don't have to order anything. Fabric beds. This one of the good ways to sell, or good ways, a great feature to point out on our fabric beds. If your client or anybody buys a fully upholstered bed, you know, it's not going to, it's going to be more prone to getting dirty, I think, than ours are. For example, you've got fabric here, you can pick whatever fabric you want here. The iron is actually going to protect the fabric from crushing and getting dirty. But one thing that I like is there's about 12 bolts. If you pop those 12 bolts off, that panel comes all the way out. So your client can reupholster it themselves or take it to somebody that does reupholstery, which is going to be a lot more cost effective than getting a whole bed reupholstered. Same thing with the side rails and the foot rail. Those panels pop out. You just take the beds in. If you ever need a fabric swatch sent to a client, we can do that. You send it to me. We can send it. You might be working with a client and they want, you know, 2 or 3 to see which one works. They're not big. They're about that big, but we'd be happy to send them out. We have about we're 10 years into bar stools now, and it's already about 40% of our business. So we sell a lot of bar stools. All of our bar stools come in a 26 or a 30-inch height, so that means counter or bar height, and they're referring to the seat height. Okay. One thing that's kind of fun on bar stools is we've got all the fabrics are available, but we can do two-tone as far as fabric is concerned on bar stools at no upcharge. So let's say your client wants a vinyl on the seat, bar stool that has a separate back, they want to put a different fabric or 2 different fabrics, you can do that. There's not an upcharge to do that. Our bar stools will hold 300 pounds. Like I said, our beds will hold 800 pounds. Our day beds will hold 400 pounds. So our product is overbuilt. You're not going to have a problem where, you know, somebody says it's not strong enough. B stands for bar stool, simple enough. The next 3 numbers that refers to that particular bar stool. So in this case, this is the Ray bar stool. Where you see H26, that's just referring to the seat height. It's either going to be H26 or H30. After that, there's the letter S. This is just a little code here. S means that it's a swivel, or maybe it's a stationary, or maybe it's a tilt back. So if the bar stool doesn't show as swivel, it's a non-swivel bar stool. You can't say, I want this bar stool as a swivel. It's only the way it's shown. Okay. You've got another bed around the corner. And the other thing, the way our numbering system works, I forgot to tell you, The item number for this is our number one selling bed, has been for years, it's called the Braden. The Braden is, item number is 1001, so 1001. Braden is always gonna be a 1001. If you want this just as it's shown, it's gonna be a CB, complete bed, 1001. We put the MPF at the back, but you could put it all together if you want. So if you wanted to just write down CB MPF 1001, that's fine. And the only other thing we need is we need a finish, and we need if there's a fabric involved, obviously, we need a fabric.